The faded scar on his left shoulder was barely visible beneath his work shirt, and the slight tremor in his right hand could have been from age, arthritis, or the weight of memories too heavy for most people to carry. They had no idea that the quiet dishwasher in the corner had once stood on a mountain in the Pacific, helping to plant a flag that would become the symbol of American victory in World War II. But today, someone would finally recognize him. Robert Martinez had been washing dishes at Mel's Diner for 8 years, and in all that time, no one had bothered to ask about his past. Before we begin this powerful story, tell me in the comments which city you're watching from today. Red vinyl booths patched with duct tape, black and white checkered floors worn smooth by countless footsteps. Most of the time, he was simply invisible, a fixture they worked around like the walk-in cooler or the ancient coffee machine that took 5 minutes to brew a pot. To 22-year-old line cook Tyler, who had never held a job longer than 6 months, 19-year-old waitress Megan, who was saving money for cosmetology school, and 25-year-old kitchen assistant Jake, who considered this a temporary stop before his music career took off. Robert was part of the furniture reliable, unnoticed, and easily replaceable. The alley behind the diner smelled of grease and old coffee grounds, but Robert had smelled much worse things in his life. Megan would joke about Robert to customers, rolling her eyes dramatically, and saying, "If you want it faster, you should go somewhere else. Our dishwasher's from the fossil era. Older. Sometimes he has trouble keeping up with the pace we need here. We're doing our best to work around it." She'd flash an apologetic smile while glancing meaningfully toward the dish pit, making it clear who was to blame for any delays. Jake constantly complained about Robert's pace to anyone who would listen, muttering, "This guy should retire. He can't keep up with our tempo. How about sitting in a nice chair at home watching TV? This place is for young, energetic people who can handle the pressure. You could probably find something more relaxed. Maybe volunteering at a library or something. You could catch up on all those old shows from your era." A few even made comments about the help these days, or how young people don't want to work anymore. For a moment, he looked at each of them in turn. There was tiredness in his eyes, a deep weariness that went beyond physical exhaustion, but not anger, not resentment. Jake, Tyler, and Megan formed an impromptu alliance against Robert, ganging up on him as if united by their frustration with his presence. No one wondered how Robert felt about being discussed like a piece of broken equipment. No one considered that he might hear every word. Tyler yelled, banging his spatula against the counter hard enough to make the salt shakers jump. "You're working like it's the 1950s. This is 2024. Everything moves faster now. Maybe it's time to accept that you can't keep up with the modern world." These kinds of outbursts had become part of the daily routine, as predictable as the morning coffee or the afternoon lull. He learned to let the words wash over him like the soapy water that ran down the drain. "Working with you is seriously tough. Can you work at a normal pace for once? We've got real customers waiting here. We need someone who understands modern workflow." And faded photos of old movie stars on the walls that had yellowed with age and cigarette smoke from decades past. He just kept doing his job with the same quiet professionalism he brought to everything in his life. A bus full of tourists had stopped unexpectedly, and the breakfast rush had Tyler scrambling to keep up with orders. The grill was smoking, the coffee pot was empty, and customers were getting impatient. In his stress, Tyler found his usual target in Robert. The neon sign outside flickered sometimes, casting an unsteady glow over Main Street, but locals didn't mind. This was their place, their gathering spot, their slice of Americana. And if you believe stories like this need to be heard, hit that subscribe button and help us keep these voices alive. The kitchen staff saw an old man who moved slowly, spoke little, and never complained about the endless stream of plates, glasses, and silverware that flowed through his station. Welcome to Unsung Hero's story. Mel's Diner was a classic American, small-town restaurant that had served the community for over 40 years. He washed plates in 3 precise stages: pre-rinse, main wash, final rinse, and carefully stacked them according to size and type. His movements were economical, deliberate, no wasted energy or motion. The discipline he'd learned on a battlefield half a century ago now echoed in a restaurant kitchen, but no one recognized the military precision in his work. To them, he was just slow. The doors opened at 5:30 a.m., but Robert Martinez was always there by 5:15, slipping quietly through the back entrance into the steam-filled kitchen that would become his world for the next 12 hours. At 82, Robert worked at the dish station like he was performing a sacred ritual. The young staff called him Old Bob when they called him anything at all. "Bob, these dishes aren't going to wash themselves," Tyler would often shout while texting friends on his phone, his attention split between grill orders and social media. Robert never responded to any of it. He had learned long ago that some battles weren't worth fighting, that dignity came from within, not from the recognition of others. That Tuesday morning, the restaurant was busier than usual. "Bob, where are you, man? We're completely out of clean plates." Robert didn't look up from the industrial-sized pot he was scrubbing, just finished methodically cleaning every inch of it before moving to the next item in his station. Megan complained loudly to customers while taking orders, making sure her voice carried to the kitchen. "Sorry for the wait, folks. Our guy in the back is a little..." Customers would smile understandingly and nod sympathetically. During the lunch rush, when the pressure reached its peak and tempers ran short, things got worse. "You know what, Bob?" Jake said mockingly, loud enough for the few remaining customers to hear. "Maybe it's time you started thinking about retirement." "Yeah," Tyler joined in, wiping sweat from his forehead with a dirty towel. Megan added her voice to the chorus, her tone condescending. "Customers expect speed and efficiency." "Bob," Robert paused in his work, slowly drying his hands with a clean towel. For a moment, he looked at each of them in turn. There was tiredness in his eyes, a deep weariness that went beyond physical exhaustion, but not anger, not resentment. Just the patient silence of a man who had seen too much, endured too much, to be broken by thoughtless words from people who had never been tested by real hardship. "I understand," he said simply, his voice barely audible above the kitchen noise. A full-page black-and-white photograph. 6 American soldiers raising the American flag on Mount Suribashi, Iwo Jima, a famous moment. The caption read, "February 23, 1945. This photograph by Joe Rosenthal became one of the most iconic images of the 20th century. Around 2:30 in the afternoon, only a few customers remained in the restaurant. Robert was working quietly, as always when a man in his 50s sat at one of the corner tables. Beside him lay a thick book, The Pacific War, Heroes and Battles of World War II. He sipped his coffee while turning the pages. Dr. Michael Thompson, a retired history professor, was passing through town. As Robert was washing a plate, Dr. Thompson approached him. When he reached page 247, he stopped. An old man was working at the dish station. When the man lifted a plate, Dr. Thompson caught sight of his profile. The faces of the 6 soldiers weren't clearly visible, but there was strength in their body language, a determination in their posture. Then he nodded quietly. "Yes, I have. I'm Dr. Thompson, a retired history professor. Could I ask you something?" These men had changed history. Dr. Thompson studied the photo carefully. Tyler, Megan, and Jake were busy with their work, none of them hearing this conversation. Then he looked back at Dr. Thompson. Dr. Thompson looked at the photo in the book, then back at the old man. It couldn't be. As he lifted his head to finish his coffee, sounds from the kitchen caught his attention. His heart stopped. Standing before him was one of the heroes from one of history's most famous photographs. The young staff were still busy with their afternoon tasks, oblivious to the conversation taking place just 20 feet away. Tyler was prepping vegetables for dinner service. Jake was restocking supplies, and Megan was wiping down tables. None of them had any idea that history was being made in their workplace. The Japanese had been digging in for months, turning the whole place into a fortress. Underground tunnels, hidden pillboxes, artillery positions carved into solid rock. Most of my buddies, boys I'd trained with, eaten with, laughed with, they didn't make it home. Every inch of that mountain was paid for in blood. When we finally took the summit, our commander, Lieutenant Colonel Johnson, told us it was time to raise the flag. The first flag we put up was too small, couldn't be seen from the beach where our guys were still fighting. So they sent us up with a bigger one. We lost so many good men on those black sand beaches, washing dishes in a small town diner. The magnitude of this moment, the sheer improbability of it, made his head spin. That profile, that posture. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of decades. I've been studying this photograph, this battle, for over 30 years. I was 19 years old, just a kid from East L.A. who'd never been farther from home than San Diego before the Corps shipped us out. I was the youngest, barely old enough to vote, but I'd proven myself in the fighting. The other 5 guys, Ira Hayes, John Bradley, Franklin Sousley, Harlan Block, and Mike Strank, they were my brothers, not by blood, but by something stronger. 5th Marine Division, 28th Regiment, 2nd Battalion. Iwo Jima was like hell on earth, Professor. Nothing could have prepared us for what we found on that island. I never imagined I'd meet one of you, but it could be. Dr. Thompson stood up, book in hand, and walked slowly toward the kitchen. "Excuse me," he said politely. Robert set down the plate he was washing and turned to face this polite gentleman. "Sure, sir." Dr. Thompson opened his book and showed page 247. "Have you ever seen this photograph?" Robert looked at the photo. For a moment, he held his breath. "Do you recognize any of the 6 soldiers in this photograph?" Robert's hands trembled slightly. There was a long silence. Then he spoke very quietly, second from the right. Dr. Thompson's eyes filled with tears. "Is that you?" Robert looked around. "A very long time ago," he said simply. Dr. Thompson's hands were trembling as he held the book. "If you don't mind," Dr. Thompson said, his voice barely steady, "could I learn this story?" Robert looked around the kitchen nervously. Robert took a deep breath, his weathered hands gripping the edge of the stainless steel sink. "February 1945, he began, his voice low but clear, each word carefully chosen. Dr. Thompson listened with the intensity of a scholar, encountering a primary source of immeasurable value, but also with the reverence of a human being, hearing first-hand testimony of extraordinary courage. 36 days that felt like 36 years, Robert continued, his eyes distant now, seeing not the diner kitchen, but a volcanic island in the Pacific. "The flag-raising, tell me about that day," Dr. Thompson whispered. Robert was quiet for a long moment, and Dr. Thompson wondered if he'd pushed too hard, asked too much. But then Robert spoke again. "February 23rd. We'd been fighting for Mount Suribachi for 4 days. You were chosen for the second flag raising?" "6 of us were picked," Robert nodded. Dr. Thompson felt tears forming. He knew those names from his research, knew the tragic fate that awaited most of them. "Do you remember that exact moment when the flag went up?" "Every detail," Robert said, his voice growing softer. "The wind was fierce that day, coming off the ocean like it wanted to knock us down. That flag was heavy, and the pole. We needed all 6 of us pushing together to get it anchored in that rocky ground. Joe Rosenthal, the photographer, was there with his camera, but honestly, we barely noticed him. We weren't thinking about history or photographs or anything like that. We were just Marines doing our job, trying to give our boys down on the beach something to look up at and feel proud of." Robert's face hardened, aged another decade in an instant. Mike Strank was killed 6 days later. Harlan Block died the same day. Franklin Sousley made it another week before a sniper got him. John Bradley survived the war, but died young, couldn't shake what he'd seen. IRA had the hardest time of all. The fame, the attention, it ate him alive. He died in 1955, only 32 years old. Dr. Thompson wiped his eyes. "And you?" "I came home," Robert said simply. "Got a job, got married, raised 2 kids. My wife Maria passed 10 years ago. Kids moved away, have their own lives. I never talked about Iwo Jima, not even to them." Robert Martinez, 5th Marine Division, 28th Regiment. One of the heroes of Iwo Jima. What was the point? It was over. Done. "Bob, are you getting paid to entertain guests?" This man fought for his country when he was 19 years old. That flag became the symbol of American victory. This man wrote history. They serve quietly, until people like you treat them with the respect they deserve. The important thing was to live, to build something good with the life those other boys gave me. Doesn't anybody know? Robert looked around and smiled quietly. Who would care? I'm just an old man washing dishes. At 55, she was a tough but fair woman. She immediately sensed the tension in the kitchen. Just then Tyler's voice rose. "Bob, where are you?" "We got work here." He looked at Dr. Thompson and Robert, frowning. "What's going on here?" Dr. Thompson stood up, book in hand. "Young man, could I speak with you about this gentleman?" "He's just the dishwasher," Tyler shrugged. "Nobody important." Dr. Thompson's expression changed. He opened his book and showed Tyler the photograph. "This man has worked here for 8 years. Never complained, never caused problems. And you people constantly put him down. Do you recognize this photo? 36 days of hell, 22,000 Japanese and 7,000 American casualties, and the story of that famous flag." Robert listened quietly, occasionally nodding in confirmation. Tyler stared. "Yeah, that's the Iwo Jima flag." "So what?" "I'm ashamed that we didn't know who you were. One of the 6 heroes in this photograph," Dr. Thompson pointed to Robert, "is standing right in front of you." Tyler's mouth fell open. Megan and Jake had approached, hearing the conversation. Below it, a bronze plaque read, "What?" Megan couldn't believe it. "Him? Bob?" Dr. Thompson nodded. Jake laughed. "Come on, he's just an old dishwasher. Are you pulling our leg?" His workload was reduced, and a special rest area was set up. But most importantly, respect was shown. He was no longer invisible. He was no longer just an old man. He was part of history. Isn't just a moment. It represents courage, sacrifice, and brotherhood. Robert Martinez hadn't spoken about that day to anyone for 77 years. Because real heroes don't brag. He would share warm memories with Robert, but mostly they just sat quietly drinking coffee. Because some moments couldn't be described with words. Because that person you don't know might be the man who changed the world. Share their names in the comments. Tell their stories. We'll see you in the next one. And until then, if you see an elderly person serving quietly anywhere, take a second look. That person might be someone who wrote history. Because here at Unsung Heroes Story, we believe every silent hero deserves to be heard. And this man, he pointed to Robert, was part of that moment. Dr. Thompson looked at Jake with a serious expression. Tyler was still stunned, but he never mentioned it ... Because real heroes don't brag, Dr. Thompson replied with a sharp tone. Megan looked at Robert, filled with shame. I didn't know. Until someone cares enough to look and discover the truth. Robert dried his hands with the towel. That's in the past. What matters is the work we do today. But Dr. Thompson wouldn't accept it. No, it matters. It matters a lot. Just then, restaurant owner Sarah Miller walked in. What's going on here? Dr. Thompson showed her the book too and explained the situation. Sarah's expression changed. She looked at Robert, then at her staff. "How," she said slowly, "could you people treat a man like this with such disrespect?" Tyler was defensive. "We didn't know ... You should have known." Sarah's voice rose. That evening, Sarah Miller made an unexpected announcement. She closed the restaurant early and gathered all the staff. She invited Dr. Thompson, too. "Tonight," Sarah said, "we're going to learn our history." Dr. Thompson spent an hour telling the story of the Battle of Iwo Jima. "This photograph," Dr. Thompson said, showing the photo on the projector screen. Tyler, Megan, and Jake didn't say a word. They were filled with shame. When the presentation ended, Sarah stood up. "Robert, I apologize to you, on behalf of both my staff and myself." Robert stood up. "That's in the past, Sarah. I was just doing my job." "No," Sarah was determined. "This won't stay in the past." A week later, Mel's diner had changed. In the center of the front wall hung a large framed copy of that famous Iwo Jima photograph. "In honor of Robert Martinez, 5th Marine Division, 28th Regiment Hero of Iwo Jima. True heroes serve in silence, 1945. Forever, Tyler." Megan and Jake now addressed Robert as Mr. Martinez. As customers learned the story, Mel's Diner became a place of pilgrimage. Veterans, history enthusiasts, and people who simply wanted to meet a real hero began coming. Robert continued washing dishes, but it was different now. Dr. Thompson visited every month, bringing new guests. Sometimes heroes come without uniforms. Sometimes the men who changed history wash dishes, mop floors, work quietly in corners no one sees. They just serve. Quietly, humbly, never expecting anything in return. That day at Mel's Diner, a young generation learned an important lesson. Never look down on someone because of their age, appearance, or job. Robert Martinez's story reminds us that true heroism lives in silence. Now, I ask you, have you ever met someone like this? Someone who seemed ordinary but had an incredible past, carrying their identity quietly? If this story touched you, subscribe and share. Help us keep these voices alive. We'll see you in the next one. And until then, if you see an elderly person serving quietly anywhere, take a second look. That person might be someone who wrote history.